Alien delegates mocked the weaponless human guards until the truth was revealed. The arrival, the massive crystalline dome of the Galactic Assembly Station floated in the darkness between stars, its surface reflecting the light of 1,000 distant suns. Inside, representatives from 43 different species gathered for what many considered the most important vote in a generation. Earth, the newest candidate for membership, would finally learn if they would be accepted into the galactic community. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood before the viewport in the human delegation's waiting area, her reflection barely visible against the vast expanse of space. Behind her, 4 members of her diplomatic team reviewed their notes one final time. They had prepared for this moment for 3 years, learning languages that no human tongue could properly pronounce, studying cultures that defied human logic, and navigating political complexities that made Earth's own troubled history seem simple by comparison. The door chimed softly. Captain Marcus Chen entered, followed by his security detail of 4 men and women. They wore simple black uniforms with no visible armor, no weapons holsters, no energy shields. Each carried only a small communication device and what appeared to be a walking stick made of polished wood. Elena turned to face them. Marcus gave her a slight nod. His team spread out through the room, taking positions that seemed random, but Elena knew were carefully calculated. She had seen them work before, though never in a situation quite like this. The Assembly's herald, a tall being from the Etherian collective whose body seemed to be made of flowing liquid metal, appeared at their door. The time had come. They walked through corridors that had been designed to accommodate beings of every shape and size. The walls curved and flowed like organic structures, adjusting their height and width as different species passed through. The air itself was layered, with different atmospheric compositions maintained at various levels to suit the needs of all attendees. As they entered the main assembly chamber, conversations in 100 different languages suddenly stopped. Every photoreceptor, eye, sensory organ, and detection array turned toward the human delegation. Elena felt the weight of their scrutiny, their judgment, their curiosity. The chamber was arranged in ascending circular tiers, with each species' delegation occupying a section suited to their needs. Some floated in anti-gravity fields, others rested in pools of liquid methane, and still others perched on structures that defied conventional geometry. At the center, the speaker's platform rose like a pillar of light, where the ancient Voidan, who led the assembly, waited. Elena's team took their assigned positions in the lower tier, traditionally reserved for provisional members. As they settled in, she noticed the reactions rippling through the gathered aliens. The Krellians, a warrior species whose empire controlled 17 star systems, were the first to voice what many were thinking. Supreme Commander Thaxos stood, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of disbelief. His species stood 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor plating that could deflect most energy weapons. Behind him, 8 Krellian warriors bristled with weapons that could vaporize, a small spacecraft. The human delegation comes before the assembly without weapons, without shields, without any means of defense. His voice boomed through the universal translators. This is either the height of arrogance or the depths of stupidity. Murmurs of agreement came from several delegations. The Nexari, beings of pure energy contained in mechanical suits, flickered in patterns that indicated confusion. The hive-minded Quellans buzzed among themselves, their 1,000 voices creating a sound like an agitated swarm. Elena stood to respond, but before she could speak, another voice interrupted. The Vorthon delegate, whose species had been at war with the Krellians for centuries, laughed in a sound like breaking glass. Perhaps the humans think us so weak that they need no protection from us. Perhaps they believe their primitive species is somehow superior to those who have traveled the stars for millennia. More voices joined in, some curious, others offended, many suspicious. Elena noticed that even their few supporters among the assembly seemed uncertain about the humans' apparent lack of security measures. She raised her hand for silence, a gesture that most species recognized. Honored delegates, Earth comes before, you in peace. Our security detail follows our planet's philosophy that the best defense is not always the most obvious one. Thaxo slammed two of his fists on his delegation's barrier. Philosophy does not stop plasma bolts. Philosophy does not protect against molecular disruptors. You insult us by suggesting that your words are stronger than our weapons. Elena remained calm, though she could feel the tension rising in the chamber. Our guards are highly trained professionals who have spent their entire lives preparing for exactly this kind of mission. They have studied each of your species, learned your capabilities, understood your fighting styles. Marcus and his team hadn't moved during the entire exchange. They stood at their posts, hands clasped behind their backs, eyes moving in slow, careful patterns around the chamber. To most observers, they looked relaxed, even bored. But Elena knew better. She could see the micro-movements, the way their weight shifted almost imperceptibly, the rhythm of their breathing that matched some pattern she couldn't quite identify. The Zilani ambassador, whose species prided itself on being the galaxy's premier information brokers, activated a holographic display. Our scans show no weapons, no defensive equipment, not even basic protective gear. Your guards carry pieces of wood, simple organic material with no technological enhancements. How can Earth expect to contribute to galactic security when you cannot even properly arm your own protectors? One of Marcus's team, Lieutenant Sarah Park, took a small step forward. It was such a minor movement that most beings didn't notice, but it placed her in a position where she could see every delegation simultaneously in her peripheral vision. The speaker, ancient beyond measure, finally stirred from his meditation. His voice, when it came, sounded like the echo of distant stars. The humans have passed all preliminary requirements for membership. Their technology, while young, shows promise. Their culture demonstrates both diversity and unity. But this matter of security protocols does raise concerns. Elena felt the moment slipping away. 3 years of preparation, humanity's dream of joining the galactic community, all hanging by a thread because they had chosen to trust in methods that these beings couldn't understand. Then the lights flickered. It was subtle at first, just a momentary dimming that could have been attributed to a power fluctuation. But Marcus's team reacted instantly. They didn't draw weapons they didn't have. They didn't shout warnings or orders. They simply moved, each taking a new position that seemed as random as their original placement, but created overlapping fields of vision that covered every possible angle of approach. The Krellian warriors laughed at the display. Supreme Commander. Thaxos gestured mockingly. Look how the humans scatter at shadows, like prey animals sensing a predator they cannot see. But Elena noticed something else. The human guards' eyes had changed. The casual, almost lazy observation had been replaced by an intense focus that seemed to take in everything at once. Their breathing had synchronized, and their seemingly random positions had created a perfect protective formation around the diplomatic team. The lights flickered again, and this time, alarms began to sound. The assembly erupted in confusion. Delegates shouted in their native languages, security forces drew weapons, energy shields activated with crackling displays of power. The chamber's massive doors sealed automatically, trapping everyone inside. Through the chaos, the human guards stood perfectly, still, waiting. Then the attack began in earnest. The revelation explosions rocked the Galactic Assembly Station as shaped charges detonated at key structural points. The crystalline dome's emergency shields activated, but whoever had planned this assault knew exactly where to strike. Hidden panels in the walls burst open and figures in black combat armor poured into the chamber, weapons firing indiscriminately into the crowd of delegates. The attackers wore no insignia, but their tactics were professional military. They moved in coordinated formations, using suppressing fire to pin down the various security forces, while strike teams advanced on specific targets. The universal translators couldn't interpret their communications, but their intent was clear. This was an assassination mission disguised as a terrorist attack. Chaos consumed the chamber. The Krellian warriors roared battle cries and charged forward, their heavy weapons blazing paths of destruction through the attackers' ranks. But for every attacker they killed, 2 more seemed to appear. The Nexari, security forces projected energy barriers, only to watch them overload and collapse under concentrated fire. The Quellen's hive mind fractured under the stress, individual drones scattering in panic. In the middle of this maelstrom, the human guards hadn't drawn their wooden sticks. They hadn't taken cover. They simply observed, their heads moving in small, precise movements as they tracked every combatant, every weapon discharge, every possible threat vector. Ambassador Rodriguez and her team had taken shelter behind overturned furniture, but Marcus and his security detail remained standing in the open, completely exposed. A squad of 6 attackers noticed the vulnerable humans and opened fire. Energy bolts screamed through the air toward the unprotected guards. Then something impossible happened. The humans moved, but not in the dramatic dives or desperate scrambles that combat usually demanded. They simply stepped aside, small movements, of no more than a few centimeters that placed them exactly where the energy bolts weren't. It looked like luck, but it happened again and again. Every shot missed by the narrowest of margins. Lieutenant Park finally drew her wooden stick. As an attacker's rifle swung toward Ambassador Rodriguez, Park moved. She didn't run or leap. She walked, taking 3 measured steps that carried her across 5 meters in less than a second. The stick struck the attacker's wrist, then elbow, then neck, in movements so fluid they seemed like a single action. The armored figure collapsed, paralyzed but alive. The other human guards were moving now, not as individuals but as a single organism with 5 bodies. They flowed through the battlefield like water through rocks, always where the attacks weren't, always arriving just as an enemy became vulnerable. Their wooden sticks found joints in armor, pressure points that bypassed protective gear, nerve clusters that no amount of shielding could protect. Supreme Commander Thaxos, bleeding from multiple wounds but still fighting, saw Lieutenant Park approaching a group of attackers who had pinned down the Vorthon delegation. She walked directly into their field of fire, and every shot missed. When she reached them, her stick moved in patterns that seemed almost lazy, but each touch dropped another attacker. By the 17 worlds, Thaxos muttered, "They're not dodging, they're predicting." He was right. Marcus's team wasn't reacting to attacks. They were anticipating them. Their eyes tracked not where weapons were pointed, but where they would be pointed. They moved not to where safety was, but to where it would be. Every step, every gesture, every breath was calculated seconds in advance. The attackers began to realize something was wrong. Their coordinated assault was falling apart, not because of the heavy weapons of the Krellians or the energy shields of the Nexari, but because 5 humans with sticks were systematically dismantling their entire operation. One attacker, larger than the others and clearly augmented with cybernetic enhancements, charged directly at Captain Marcus Chen. The captain didn't move until the last possible moment, then pivoted slightly, extending his stick to tap the attacker's knee. The cybernetic leg seized up, sending the attacker tumbling past. Before he could recover, Marcus's stick touched 3 more points on his body, and he went completely still. The Zelani ambassador's enhanced sensors were recording everything, analyzing the human's movements at superhuman speeds. What he discovered defied belief. Each human guard was processing thousands of micro-expressions, body language cues, electromagnetic signatures, air pressure changes, even the sound of muscle tension. They were reading the entire battlefield like a book, seeing attacks before the attackers had even decided to make them. Within 10 minutes it was over. 47 attackers lay unconscious or paralyzed on the chamber floor. Not one was dead, despite the dozens of delegates and security personnel who had been killed in the assault. The human guards stood in a circle around their delegation, wooden sticks held loosely at their sides, breathing normally as if they had just completed a mild exercise routine. The chamber fell silent except for the moaning of the wounded and the sparking of damaged equipment. Every surviving delegate stared at the humans in shock. Elena Rodriguez stood up from behind her cover, brushing dust from her diplomatic uniform. She looked around the devastated chamber, at the dead and wounded from dozens of species, at the attackers who had been neutralized without a single fatality. "Speaker," she addressed the ancient Voidan, "I believe we should continue the membership vote once medical teams have tended to the wounded." The absurdity of her calm statement in the aftermath of such violence broke the spell. Delegates began shouting questions, demands, accusations. How had the humans known? What were those sticks? How could they move like that? Supreme Commander Thaxos, his wounds being tended by Krellian medics, raised one arm for silence. His voice, when it came, held none of its earlier mockery. I withdraw my earlier statements about human security protocols. He looked directly at Marcus and his team. I would very much like to know how you did that. Marcus stepped forward, his posture relaxed but respectful. Commander Thaxos, every human guard undergoes a minimum of 15 years of training. We study mathematics, probability, psychology, xenobiology, and dozens of martial disciplines from Earth's history. But the real secret isn't in what we study, it's in what we are. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Humans evolved on a world where we were neither the strongest nor the fastest predators. We survived by being able to predict danger, to see patterns others missed, to know what would happen before it happened. Our ancestors who couldn't anticipate the tiger's pounce didn't live to have children. The Nexari delegate pulsed with curiosity. But this level of prediction, it's beyond natural evolution. Elena nodded. You're right. What you saw today is the result of selective training that enhances natural human intuition. Our guards don't just see the present, they see the probable futures branching out from each moment. They don't react to attacks. They position themselves where attacks won't be. The wooden sticks are just tools. The real weapon is the mind-wielding. Them. The speaker raised one ancient appendage. And the attackers, they all live? Everyone, Marcus confirmed. We don't kill unless absolutely necessary. Death is permanent. Unconsciousness is temporary. These attackers have information we need, stories to tell, possibly families who were threatened to ensure their cooperation. They are criminals, yes, but they are also evidence. The Vorthan delegate, who had been saved by Lieutenant Park's intervention, made a sound like wind chimes. You could have killed them all. You had the capability. Why show mercy? Because Elena said strength isn't about what you can destroy. It's about what you can protect. Earth seeks membership in this assembly not to prove our power, but to share our perspective. Today you've seen one aspect of that perspective. But even as medical teams moved through the chamber and security forces began investigating the attack, Captain Marcus Chen remained alert. His team had returned to their original positions, but their eyes continued their careful observation. Because somehow in the way the attackers had moved, in the targets they had chosen, in the timing of their assault, Marcus had seen a pattern that suggested this wasn't over. The real threat was still coming. The truth unveiled as medical teams worked through the night cycle. Investigators from 17 different species examined the unconscious attackers. The assembly chamber had been transformed into a crime scene, with forensic specialists using technologies that could detect molecular traces, quantum signatures, and probability distortions. But it was Lieutenant Sarah Park, standing quietly, beside one of the fallen attackers who made the crucial discovery. Captain, she said softly, causing Marcus to join her. Look at their positioning. Not where they ended up, but where they started. Marcus studied the scene, his enhanced perception processing the data. Then he saw it. The attackers' entry points, their initial targets, their movement patterns. When, overlaid on a three-dimensional map of the chamber, formed a specific shape, a symbol. Elena, brought over to observe, felt her blood chill. That's the sign of the Entropy Syndicate. The speaker, who had been coordinating the investigation, floated closer. The Entropy Syndicate was destroyed 300 cycles ago. The combined fleets of 7 species ensured not one of their bases survived, but the symbol was unmistakable. The Entropy Syndicate had believed that galactic civilization had grown too complex, too interconnected. They had sought to return the galaxy to a simpler time through selective destruction of advanced species. Their defeat had been one of the few times the fractious assembly had truly united. Marcus's team exchanged glances, a silent communication that required no words. They spread out through the chamber again, but this time their search pattern was different. They weren't looking for threats. They were looking for something hidden. The Zalani ambassador, whose species information network spanned the galaxy, was running correlation analyses on his personal systems. If the Entropy Syndicate survived, they would need resources, bases, followers. My networks show no evidence of such an organization. But he paused, his multiple eyes focusing on different data streams. There have been statistical anomalies, ships disappearing in supposedly safe sectors, research stations going dark, colony communications failing. Always explained by local phenomena, but the pattern is intentional, Elena finished. Someone has been slowly weakening the Assembly's infrastructure, creating vulnerabilities. Supreme Commander Thaxos, his wounds sealed but still painful, growled his displeasure. Then this attack was not about Earth's membership. We were merely convenient targets gathered in one place. No, Marcus said quietly. Earth was absolutely the target. Think about it, a new species with unusual defensive capabilities, proving themselves by stopping a terrorist attack. It would have been the perfect introduction to the galactic community. Except the real attack hasn't happened yet, Lieutenant Park finished. As if her words were a trigger, every light in the chamber suddenly went out. Emergency power should have activated instantly, but nothing happened. In the absolute darkness, only species with alternative sensory methods could perceive anything. Then a voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere, using a technology that bypassed the universal translators and spoke directly into each being's consciousness. The Assembly has grown weak, dependent on cooperation instead of strength, on democracy instead of natural selection. Today, we correct that mistake. Light returned, but it was wrong. The chamber's holographic systems had been hijacked, projecting images that showed every homeworld of every member species. Earth hung among them, blue and white and vulnerable. The human guards moved instantly, forming a tighter circle around their delegation. But Elena stepped past them, addressing the disembodied voice. The Entropy Syndicate failed before. It will fail again. The voice laughed, a sound that each species heard as their own kind's expression of amusement. The Syndicate's methods were crude. Destroy everything and hope something better grows from the ashes. We have learned. We will preserve the strong and eliminate the weak. Starting with Earth. The holographic display zoomed in on Earth, showing a fleet of ships emerging from hidden positions throughout the solar system. They were constructs of impossible design, using technology that shouldn't exist. Your world has no defenses, the voice continued. Your people don't even know the danger they're in. In precisely one rotation of your planet, these ships will activate a quantum cascade that will render Earth uninhabitable. Unless we surrender our membership application, Elena said. The voice made a negative sound. Too simple. Earth has shown capabilities we didn't anticipate. These guards of yours, their prediction abilities, their mercy, their integration of intuition and action. These traits must not be allowed to spread to other species. Earth must be eliminated, but we offer the Assembly a choice. The holograms shifted, showing tactical data. Vote to expel Earth from consideration, declare them a threat to galactic security, and commit your combined fleets to their destruction. Do this and we will spare your own worlds the chaos we have prepared. Refuse and watch as 60% of your populations die in coordinated strikes you cannot prevent. The chamber erupted in angry voices, but the speaker raised his appendages for silence. How do we know you have such capability? In response, every personal device, every security system, every piece of technology in the chamber activated simultaneously, displaying the same message. We are already inside. The threat was clear. Somehow the new Entropy Syndicate had infiltrated every major system in the Assembly. They could cripple the galactic civilization with a thought. Marcus stepped forward. There's a problem with your plan. The voice seemed amused. Oh? You assume Earth is defenseless. You assume our mercy is weakness. You assume our prediction abilities are limited to physical combat. Marcus looked up at the ceiling, though the voice had no actual location. You're wrong on all counts. He pulled out his communication device, a simple thing by galactic standards, But when he activated it, it did something unprecedented. It connected directly to Earth, instantaneously, across thousands of light years, using no known faster-than-light communication method. Director, Marcus said simply. Code 7. Confirm, a human voice responded immediately. Confirmed, Captain Chen. We've been tracking them for 6 months. All 17 cells have been identified. Await your signal. The disembodied voice spluttered in confusion. Impossible. We're beyond your technology, beyond your reach. Elena smiled. You studied our guards. You analyzed their prediction capabilities, but you never asked the important question. If 5 humans can predict and prevent 47 individual attacks, what can 8 billion humans do when networked together? She gestured to the holographic display. For the last 6 months, Earth's entire population has been participating in what we told them was a massive multiplayer prediction game. Each person contributing their intuition, their pattern recognition, their unique perspective. We've been mapping probability streams on a galactic scale. We knew about your surviving cells 3 months ago. We knew about this attack 2 weeks ago. We let it happen. Why? The voice had lost its confidence. Because, Marcus said, we needed the assembly to see that Earth doesn't seek membership for protection or resources. We seek it to protect others, to add our unique capabilities to the greater good. He looked at each delegation in turn. Earth makes the assembly this offer. Accept our membership, and we will share our prediction networks, our training methods, our perspective on defense through understanding rather than force. Together, we can identify and neutralize threats before they manifest. Separately, we're all vulnerable. The speaker pulsed with ancient wisdom. And the Entropy Syndicate's fleet approaching Earth? Elena's smile widened. Look closer at the telemetry. The Zalani ambassador enhanced the holographic display, analyzing the data more carefully. The ships, they're not moving. They're stationary. They've been stationary for... His multiple eyes widened. 3 days. Every ship was caught in a probability loop, Park explained. Our prediction network identified the moment they would decloak and created localized space-time paradoxes. They're stuck in the moment before they reveal themselves, unable to move forward or backward in time. We can release them whenever we want, preferably into the custody of assembly security forces. The disembodied voice roared in fury. You cannot do this. We have weapons you cannot imagine. No, Marcus said calmly. You have weapons we've already imagined, predicted, and countered. Every move you make creates ripples in probability. 8 billion humans, each contributing their small part to reading those ripples. You lost this war before you started it. Prove it, the voice challenged. If you're so capable, tell me where I am. Marcus looked at his team. Each guard closed their eyes for exactly 3 seconds, connecting to the vast human network. When they opened them, they spoke in unison. Station 779, asteroid belt of the Kelos system, Third Moon's Lagrange Point, underground facility built into a repurposed mining complex, currently powered by 3 fusion reactors defended by 17 automated weapon systems and exactly 43 life signs, including yourself. Silence filled the chamber. Assembly fleet vessels are already en route, Elena added. You have approximately 15 minutes before they arrive. I suggest surrender. It's more mercy than you offered us. The voice said nothing more. The hijacked holograms disappeared, replaced by the assembly's standard displays showing multiple fleet signatures converging on the location Marcus had identified. For several long moments, no one in the chamber spoke. Then Supreme Commander Thaxos began to laugh, a sound like controlled thunder. By the 17 worlds, he boomed. They played us all, the humans, the syndicate, everyone. He looked at Elena with something approaching respect. You used yourselves as bait to draw out a threat we didn't even know existed. The speaker's ancient form pulsed thoughtfully. This prediction network of yours, it could change everything. Wars could be prevented before they begin. Natural disasters anticipated and avoided. Economic collapse is prevented. It could, Elena agreed, but only if used wisely, and only if all species contribute their own unique perspectives. Humans can predict probabilities, but we need other species' knowledge, experience, and wisdom to interpret what we see. We're not offering to lead the assembly. We're offering to serve it. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. As Earth was formally welcomed into the Galactic Assembly, Captain Marcus Chen and his team finally relaxed their vigilance. They set down their wooden sticks for the first time in 17 hours and allowed themselves small smiles. The Vorthan delegate approached Lieutenant Park. "These sticks you carry, are they symbolic?" Park picked up hers, running her hand along the smooth wood. "On Earth we have an old saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. It means diplomacy is preferable, but strength must back it up. These aren't weapons. They're reminders that the greatest strength is knowing when not to use it." Around them, the assembly chamber began to transform. Repair systems activated, damage was assessed and corrected, and the great work of galactic civilization continued. But something fundamental had changed. Earth had not just joined the assembly. It had shown them a new way of thinking about security, about cooperation, about the future itself. In the months that followed, the Human Prediction Network would become the foundation of a new age of peace. Not perfect peace, for that was impossible among so many diverse species, but a peace built on understanding, on seeing threats before they manifested, on choosing cooperation over conflict. And in the historical records of the Galactic Assembly, this day would be remembered not as the day Earth joined the galactic community, but as the day the galaxy learned that true strength comes not from weapons or shields or fleets, but from the ability to see what others cannot, to understand what others miss, and to protect without destroying. The human guards returned to Earth as heroes, but they didn't see themselves that way. They were simply people who had trained their entire lives for a single purpose, to stand between danger and those they protected, armed with nothing more than wisdom, perception, and simple wooden sticks. For in the end, the greatest weapon humanity brought to the stars was not technology or military might, but the understanding that real security comes from seeing the future not as something that happens to you, but as something you help create. One prediction, one choice, one moment of mercy at a time.